Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Saturday the 28th of May 2022. This week I'm coming to you from Las Vegas. Like many people, my plans had to change in 2020 when I turned 50 and my much planned trip to Las Vegas was cancelled. We've rebooked it twice and this is the third time now and we are finally here. Before I left, I made sure that the newsletter all was pulled together and it will be coming out to you as soon as it's back from the printers mid next week. Also this week, we enjoyed an amazing afternoon for our Site for Wight Jubilee celebration on Thursday. It was an amazing afternoon organised entirely by Susan, our volunteers and members manager. Such a huge thank you, Susan, for organising an amazing afternoon. The Lord Lieutenant of the island also attended and Barrett Holmes, who had made a donation to the charity, presented us with the cheque. It really was a lovely afternoon celebrating the Platinum Jubilee. I hope everybody finds interesting and supportive articles within the newsletter, and please never forget, if you want to contribute, lived experience is so vital. Thank you, Lisa, CEO, Site for Wight.
This is Patrina reading an article from Island Echo. Robbed a bank being sued for $650,000 over Bestival bailout loans. The Isle of Wight's robbed a bank is being sued for a whopping $650,000 amid allegations he has failed to pay back loans that helped prop up Bestival before its demise. A trial is currently underway at the County Court of Central London, at the Royal Courts of Justice, where Ticket Line Network Limited is attempting to claim back the massive sum from Rob Dar Bank, real name Robert Gorham. It is alleged that Ticket Line personally loaned Rob and co-director John Hughes around $1 million between 2016 and 2018, but they have not yet received the full amount back, according to the Mail Online. Loans were made personally to the event's directors as Ticket Line did not have faith in the company, which eventually collapsed into insolvency. The court has heard after the past week that Bestival repeatedly found itself in financial crisis, with the 2018 event almost having to be cancelled, saved only by a last-minute £249,000 cash injection from Ticket Line. The ticket sales company previously loaned £750,000 to keep the event afloat, but within 2 years Bestival's directors had come back cap in hand, as described by Ticket Line's barrister Paul Burton. Mr. Burton has detailed to the court over the past 6 days that only £350,000 of the initial £750,000 loan, which was agreed orally, has been repaid, and no part of the second £249,000 loan. The company is now seeking £649,000 plus interest. Bestival began on the island at Robin Hill in 2004, but left the island after the 2016 event. The bank said the boring economics of getting people onto the island was the reason the event moved to Lulworth in Dorset. Co-director John Hughes has accepted that the loan has to be repaid, but Rob the bank is fighting the claim, saying he has never agreed to a personal loan. Rob the bank's barrister Jonathan Miller has told the court that their defence is that it was not a personal loan and what Ticket Line say happened didn't happen. The court has heard from Rob himself, who said that he did not have much involvement in the financial side of Bestival. He explicitly told the judge that he never signed up for a personal loan. The trial being heard in front of His Honour Judge Johns QC continues and is expected to last another 2 days.
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo news site, headlined, Scores on the Doors, latest food hygiene ratings for the Isle of Wight. island restaurants, cafes and businesses have been ranked on their food hygiene standards and practices, including the St Mary's Hospital caterers, who got top marks. Inspectors from the Isle of Wight Council ranked the establishments on their hygienic food handling, cleanliness and the condition of facilities and food safety management to determine how safe and clean they are. Eateries are then given ratings for their standards ranging from a 5, that's very good, to 0, urgent improvement necessary. Here are the results of the most recent inspections. With a 5 and very good were the Hare and Hounds in Arraton, St Mary's Hospital Catering Department in Newport, Bit on the Side at the Island Riding Centre in Newport, the George Hotel in Yarmouth, Kevar's Cafe in the Country at St Helens, Wight Karting at Westridge, the Gracelee Hotel in Shanklin, the Culverhaven Inn in Bembridge, the Bandstand in Sandown, and with a 4, that's a good rating, W.W. Woodford and Son in Bembridge, the Stag in Parkhurst, Lakeside Park Hotel in Wootton, the Bahar Tandoori in Cowes, Mr. C's Handcrafted Food Company in Sandown, the Old Barracks, that's the Puckpool Tea Gardens, Sam's Fast Food Restaurant and Takeaway in Ryde, the 8 Bells in Carisbrook, Lidl in Newport, Libreville's Bus Stop Cafe in Hale Common, and the Duck in Ryde. With a 3 rating, that's generally satisfactory, we have the China Garden in Shanklin, Crepe Lovers in Ryde, Thai Mukta in Shanklin, St Helens Post Office, Kate's Cottage in Sandown. Rated 2 with improvement necessary, Urban Saints Centre in Ryde, and Seabreeze, East Cowes. Rated 1 with major improvement necessary, the Jaffran Indian Restaurant and Takeaway in Freshwater, and there were no outlets with a 0 rating of urgent improvement necessary.
This is Michael reading from Island Echo. Sir Bradley and Sir Chris amongst legends on the island for LeBlanc event. The Isle of Wight recently welcomed legends of cycling and the kitchen as the island hosted the first LeBlanc cycling break of 2022. Welcoming over 60 guests to the Royal Hotel for a 3-day joyriding weekend, star names including Sir Bradley Wiggins, Sir Chris Hoy and Johan Moziu were spotted mingling with locals across the island, including the Garlic Farm, the George, and during champagne stops on the island's beaches. Marking a return to the Isle of Wight following his first ever visit in 2021, Sir Bradley Wiggins was this year joined by his friend and fellow gold medal Olympian Sir Chris Hoy, himself on his first ever visit to the Isle of Wight. Also joining guests was 3 times winner of the Tour of Flanders and the Paris-Roubaix, Johan Muziu, as well as a fleet of team riders including GB triathlete Annie Emerson and famed GB cyclists Chris Lillywhite and Rory Townsend. With star quality as strong in the kitchen as on the roads, Angela Harnett of the Michelin-starred Murano collaborated with the Royal Kitchen team to create a 5-course feast for LeBlanc guests on Saturday night. Profiling the best of the Isle of Wight throughout the weekend, guests travelled with red funnel ferries, enjoying the hospitality of their signature lounge before a welcome G&T courtesy of Mermaid Gin. Luxury partners also included Laurent Perrier, Michelin, Aston Martin and Specialized Bikes, and with guests wearing bespoke kit from Rafa. 6-time Olympic gold medalist Sir Chris Hoy commented, "Another unforgettable weekend with my friends at LeBlanc. Loved my time on the island. Great people, amazing food and beautiful roads. In my opinion, LeBlanc created the best joyriding experiences out there." LeBlanc's Isle of Wight weekend was the first of its 2022 series. To see other breaks currently on sale for 2022 and to learn of priority booking for 2023, sign up to LeBlanc's membership at www.leblanc.com.
East Cowes councillors not happy about proposed over-the-top parking restrictions. From Island Echo, read by Jasmine. Proposed parking restrictions on the Hawthorne estate in East Cowes has been branded completely over the top by local councillors. The Isle of Wight Council wants to introduce double yellow lines across 53 areas of the Hawthorne Meadows estate and along Saunders Way, as previously reported by the Island Echo. It says the traffic regulation order is being proposed to deal with highway safety issues caused by parking that compromises safety of pedestrians. It was also hindering the ability of emergency service vehicles to pass through the estate. The matter was discussed at the East Cowes Town Council on Thursday, ahead of the final submission for public comments and following concerns from residents. Town councillors recognised there had been some silly parking on the corners and junctions, which needed to be dealt with, but the planned restrictions were completely over the top. Mayor of East Cowes, Councillor Tracy Reardon, said that they seemed very extreme, but did support increased safety measures. Councillor Carl Love said one solution would be to impose a blanket 20 miles per hour restriction on residential roads to stop dangerous speeding. There was concerns that opposing all restrictions would see them disappear and not be brought back for a number of years. Councillor Stephen Hendry used a map to highlight certain junctions and corners within the estate where ECTC agreed with the double yellow lines. A main concern by councillors was that where all the cars were going to go if they were not able to park where they used to. The Isle of Wight Council has already said that there were no plans to deal with the cars displaced by proposed restrictions. Around the estate, parking spaces are provided for homes, but with many households having more cars than private spaces, on-street parking is usually the only alternative. Changes are being proposed to Albert Way, Brinton Close, Chinchin Close, Cromwell Avenue, Guster Grove, Haven Close, Lambert Lane, Naval Terrace, Saunders Way, St Wilfrid's Drive. The public consultation has now ended.
This is Petrina reading from Isle of Wight Radio. Rookley couple make royal discovery in front garden. A retired couple who bought a bungalow in Rookley discovered a disused bus shelter in the front garden and inside a stone plaque celebrating the Queen's coronation. Now Marianne and Robert Jackson plan to join the Queen's Jubilee celebrations next week, inviting special guests to visit the plaque. Isle of Wight Bus and Coach Museum President and Archivist Richard Newman, a former bus driver with sudden vectis, remembers when the shelter, then the part of the main road, was last in use, more than 40 years ago. The Jacksons purchased their home last year and at first sight assumed the brick building was a garden shed. No one could explain at the time why the bus shelter had moved from the road outside to the garden. They later approached a stonemason who confirmed the plaque's authenticity and that it was hand-carved and made of Portland stone. Marianne said, "Our objective would be to open the shelter for official events, including perhaps the Tour of Britain bike road race in September. The Jubilee is a wonderful opportunity for us to celebrate the Queen's longevity and to thank her for her stoicism and putting up with so much in her life. We've been lucky to have such a brilliant Queen." She also hoped the shelter and plaque might provide a symbolic historic structure in the local campaign to reduce the spread of overdevelopment. Like a lot of people, I'm worried that developers are building too many new properties which in time could ruin the village image. Bus historian Mr. Newman recollects when the bus stop was in its original position adjacent to the shelter. The stop was moved for safety reasons because of road widening. I believe the shelter and a similar one, also no longer in use at God's Hill, were built for the coronation in 1953.
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo news site, headlined Islanders Urged to Protect Loved Ones from Callous Fraudsters by Hampshire Constabulary. Hampshire Constabulary is urging family members and friends of vulnerable people to be on their guard to help protect their loved ones from courier fraudsters. Typically, courier fraudsters target their victims by claiming to be a police officer or member of staff from a victim's bank, and they often pressure people into making quick financial decisions to assist with fictitious investigations. In 2021 alone, 110 people in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight were victims of courier fraud, with losses totalling £786,963. Hampshire Constabulary is now supporting a new campaign launched by City of London Police to help tackle courier fraud. To help raise awareness, the City of London Police has released a new list of tactics used by the fraudsters. An analysis of data from the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau, that's the NFIB, has highlighted 4 modus operandi, that's MOs, which are now more commonly being used by fraudsters. First of these, bank card expiry. Fraudsters claim to be from the victim's bank and say their card is no longer valid. They ask for the PIN number and then send a courier to collect the card before using it for fraudulent purposes. Second of these, purchasing high-end items. The suspects pretend to be police officers and ask the victim to help with an undercover operation by purchasing expensive items like watches, jewellery and gold. Once the item is bought, the victim will hand over the item to the criminal. Counterfeit cash and bank investigations. A person claiming to be a police or banking official informs the victim that they need to help with a banking corruption investigation. The victim is told to withdraw a large amount of money, and the cash is picked up later by a courier to check for fingerprints or to identify counterfeit banknotes. Computer takeover. The fraudster telephones the victim purporting to be from their internet service provider, saying that they have had an issue with their internet connectivity and they are due compensation. The victim is persuaded to download a remote access application giving the suspects access to their home computers. The fraudster persuades the victims into thinking that they have been paid too much compensation, and the victims then withdraw cash to pay the money back, which is later collected by a courier. Detective Inspector Mark Carter from Hampshire Constabulary's Serious and Organised Crime Unit said, "These fraudsters are heartless individuals who prey on some of the most vulnerable people living in our area. We know that the victims of courier fraud are typically aged between 70 and 89, with women more likely to be targeted than men. I would like to urge everyone who has an elderly relative, friend, or who cares for someone in that age bracket to make them aware of this type of fraud. We want people to know the tactics used by fraudsters and to be aware of the warning signs to look out for. These incidents can often have a huge impact on victims as they come to terms with the fact that they have fallen for a scam and the financial losses that come with it. We want to ensure that people do not become repeat victims, so we want to educate them and their loved ones to ensure that fraudsters can no longer take advantage of Hampshire and Isle of Wight residents. Our officers are determined to bring an end to offences of this nature and will take appropriate steps to identify and prosecute the individuals responsible." Signs of courier fraud. Courier fraud usually starts with an unsolicited telephone call to the victim. Typically, the suspect will pose as a bank official, police officer, or computer utility engineer. Courier fraudsters will usually request victims to purchase high-value items such as a Rolex watch and gold bullion, withdraw cash, or provide a bank card for collection from a courier. Fraudsters will instruct victims not to tell any family or friends about what they are doing. When carrying out courier fraud, criminals will request that the victim hangs up the phone, to ring their bank for confirmation while keeping the line open. The suspect then purports to be a bank official and provides false confirmation. Fraudsters will also make arrangements for a courier to meet the victim to collect the item they have purchased. Anyone who receives an unexpected call from someone claiming to be one of these officials should verify they are speaking to someone genuine, hang up, wait 5 minutes and call back on a number that they know is genuine.
This is Michael reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Significant fine for firm over unlicensed security at Isle of Wight Festival. A security firm and its director have received significant fines and a criminal record after they were found to have attempted to provide unlicensed security at last year's Isle of Wight Festival. The Security Industry Authority, SIA, said Company Island Security placed the public at risk by supplying a person who attempted to use a counterfeit licence. It was said the man in question was not fit and proper and had not done the training required to protect the public. Ratu Bailout, director of the firm, pleaded guilty to 2 offences at Milton Keynes Magistrate Court on Friday the 13th of May. The festival took place between September the 16th to the 19th, 2021. Its lead security contractor, Main Event Security Services, an SIA-approved contractor, used several contractors to supply additional security. On September the 15th, the company was carrying out checks to ensure that the security operatives deployed were legally allowed to work at the festival. During this process, it discovered a counterfeit licence which was valid but did not belong to the man attempting to use it. The licence was retained and the unknown man was escorted off the site. The case was referred to the SIA's Criminal Investigation Team, who confirmed that Ireland's Protection Security Services Limited, a firm registered in Northampton, were responsible for the deployment of the unknown man carrying the counterfeit licence. The Security Industry Authority says Mr. Bailout failed to provide the required information to the SIA when requested, and a prosecution was brought against both him and his company. The person who held the legitimate licence confirmed that he had not worked at the Isle of Wight Festival. Mark Chapman, the SIA's Criminal Investigations Manager, said, "The protection of the public at high-profile festivals is paramount. Main Event Security Services Limited did exactly as would be expected of an approved contractor by identifying and rejecting a suspicious licence through robust due diligence. Ireland Security placed the public at risk by supplying a person who was not fit and proper and had not done the requisite training to protect the public. Bailout has now had his close protection licence suspended, and both he and his company have incurred significant fines and a criminal record. He had also not long been a director of a company and has been prosecuted." Mr. Bailout was fined £300, ordered to pay £1,624 court costs, and a victim surcharge of £34. The company was also fined £250, ordered to pay £800 court costs, and another victim surcharge of £34.
Meat and 2 veg. Shoplifter caught putting steak down his trousers. From Island Echo, read by Jasmine. Police are asking islanders to think about where their steak may have been after a thief was caught on CCTV putting meat products down his trousers. With the cost of living on the rise and drug use rife in the local community, thieves are continuing to target local shops and stealing a whole array of items, including a popular choice, meat. In the past week alone, thefts on the island have included speakers, cables, duvet covers, candles, sweets, beer, gin and fillet steak. Officers have been investigating one particularly memorable incident in which CCTV footage captures a male taking 2 steaks out of their sealed packets and placing them down the front of his trousers. The incident took place in Newport recently. PC Livy of Newport Police Station has said, "I know most people buy steaks from the shops, but clearly lots of people are purchasing via other means. So if that is you and you are enjoying that nice juicy steak tonight, I hope you've cooked it well." In all seriousness, our team are targeting our shoplifters by means of arrest or summons to court and out-of-court disposals. We are working with both the Newport Shop Watch and the Hampshire Business Crime Silver Group to drive down retail thefts by varied means. We are also targeting those that handle the stolen goods.
This is Patrina reading an article from Island Echo. Man who forgot his walking stick banned from driving after pub visit. A freshwater man who foolishly decided to drive home after a visit to the pub has been handed a 12-month ban by magistrates. 62-year-old Stephen Summers of Silcombe Lane was found behind the wheel of his Ford Transit van on the 4th of May this year after police caught sight of the vehicle on Tennyson Road, Freshwater. The court heard last Friday that Summers, who appeared in front of the bench with mobility issues, had been invited to the pub by a friend and had full intentions to walk home. Liz Miller, prosecuting, explained that Sergeant Brown stopped Summers at just before 2300 at night. He had one passenger in his van at the time. The force's veteran admitted to drinking and failed a roadside breath test, going on to blow 59 at the station, the legal limit being 35. Defending Michael McGoldrick detailed Summers' health conditions, including chronic arthritis, COPD, asthma, and swelling of the legs. In the same breath, he explained that his client had intended to walk home around half a mile after consuming 2 or 3 pints at the pub. However, when Summers went to his van, he realised his walking aids were not there and made the foolish decision to drive home. Summers pleaded guilty to a single charge of drink driving. Magistrates handed down a 12-month driving ban, a £120 fine, and ordered Summers to pay £50 costs with a £34 surcharge.
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo, headlined, "Drug driver who was spotted driving erratically, handed 12-month ban." A Ryde man has been handed a 12-month driving disqualification after his erratic driving led to a drug drive arrest. 24-year-old Killian Butler of Oakvale in Oakfield pleaded guilty to possession of a Class B drug, that's cannabis, and drug driving, also cannabis, when he appeared before the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Friday. Butler was stopped by police at Scotchelsbrook Lane in Lake on the 19th of February this year, after officers caught sight of his erratic driving. They also noted a brake light was out on his grey Volkswagen Golf. As officers approached the car, they could smell cannabis, which resulted in a roadside drugs wipe being conducted. Butler failed. A search also located a small amount of cannabis, £10 worth. The court heard that police had to use CS gas to subdue Butler, who was taken to the ground and cuffed. He was initially arrested on suspicion of assaulting an emergency worker, but the charge was dropped when the officer's body-worn video was reviewed. Defending, Michael McGoldrick said that his client suffers from fibromyalgia and consumes cannabis to ease the pain. Mr. McGoldrick explained to the court that his client had a joint 7 to 8 hours prior to being caught and felt fine to drive. Details of borderline personality disorder and depression were also given. Magistrates handed Killian Butler a 12-month driving ban, fined him £80 and ordered him to pay £50 costs with a £34 surcharge.
Greenfingered volunteers help spruce up Ryde's town square. From On the Wight, read by Jasmine. Volunteers and organisations have come together to help brighten up the area outside Ryde's co-op. Volunteers and organisations from around Ryde got together on Monday, 19th of May, to transform the old flower beds around Ryde's co-op store in Anglesey Street. With support from local gardening guru Mike Fitt, OBE, volunteers from Vernon Square Conservation Society joined staff from the co-op store to prepare the beds and plant out a wide range of flowers and plants. Many local organisations joined in to support the project, including Ryde Town Council and the Ryde High Street Heritage Action Zone. Several tonnes of locally made compost were donated by English Heritage at Osborne House, and sustainable plants were given by the coastal gardener. Nearby, Crepe Lovers Cafe offered hot drinks to the thirsty workers, and the co-op store provided willing staff to help with the digging. Some of the heavier work was done by the Isle of Wight Council's ground maintenance contractor, John O'Connor Ground Maintenance, supported by the council's park officer, Kristen Herlock. Mike Fitt explained, "This area used to be a dismal place, full of weeds, until last year, when we did a quick makeover and started making it better. This year, we're doing it for real, with plants and particularly pollinating plants that will not only look good for Ryde shoppers, but do some good for the environment." Ryde Co-op team manager said, "This is great. It's really nice to see colleagues getting on board and working here in the heart of the community. Everyone has come together and made this walkway look so much nicer."
This is Michael reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. 3 months of works means no Island Line trains up Ryde Pier. Trains will be unable to serve Ryde Pier Head for at least 3 months from September. Works to finish safety critical maintenance on Ryde Pier are scheduled to take place. It means those using the Island Line will have to disembark at Ryde Esplanade station and find an alternative way up the pier. Network Rail, which is leading the project, said it could last for 12 weeks at least. It doesn't yet know the exact dates works will be carried out, however. A spokesperson said, "We are finalising plans to complete safety critical maintenance on Ryde Pier. It is likely that the line between Ryde Pier Head and Ryde Esplanade will be closed for at least 12 weeks, starting in September. We will announce exact dates as soon as they are available. We have timed our programme of work so that it has the lowest possible impact on our passengers." Island Line only reopened in November 2021, following a £26 million upgrade. Network Rail said it wasn't possible to carry out works to Ryde Pier at that time. A spokesperson continued, "It was not possible to complete our work during the Island Line closure in 2021 as our programme of work had not been finalised."
Mrs. Petrina reading an article from Island Echo. Sandowns Little Dessert Shop goes on the market for £125,000. Just 3 years after opening, the Little Dessert Shop in Sandown is now up for sale, as travelling is taking its toll on the Midlands-based owners. The artisan ice cream and dessert parlour opened on the corner of Pier Street and the Esplanade in June 2019. and quickly became a firm favourite for locals and tourists alike. It boasts a high level of regular and repeat trade, along with plenty of new visiting tourists. Waffles, crepes, pancakes, cookie dough, sundaes, verines, ice creams, gelatos, cheesecakes, bakes, patisserie, cakes and shakes are all served with the option of taking away. Now the franchise is up for sale for a cool £125,000, although potential buyers could rebrand and be independent. The property is leasehold with an annual rent of £18,000, with the potential for a freehold option. Included in the sale price is all equipment, fixtures and fittings, which is said to be attractive to a new purchaser as additional funds will not be needed. It's said that the business would best suit a husband and wife combination who ideally would live on the island.
Hi, this is Steve reading a story from Island Echo, headlined Learning Disability Support Centre to Open in the Heart of Newport. The Isle of Wight Learning Disability Support Centre at Holyrood Hall in the High Street in Newport will be opening on Monday 13th of June. The centre will be a place where people with a learning disability can come along and talk about their care and support needs, where they will be listened to and given a voice, where they will be given a target development plan setting out their short and long-term goals and have support for how they want to live their lives. The centre will provide people with access to training and personal development to improve their life skills, focusing on preparing for work and volunteering, independent living, and personal and social development. It will work to minimise social exclusion by offering support that enables people to gain self-confidence, to better accomplish day-to-day activities, and integrate with the community. People with learning disability are more excluded from the world of work, volunteering, and being part of their communities. They find it difficult to express their wishes and ideas to others. They tend to not put themselves forward or know where to get help and support to achieve their goals. The centre aims to challenge this and change this. Project lead Lee White says, alongside providing group discussions, education opportunities and support to stay healthy, we will be exploring what is available to the island community and how can people be supported to access services and activities. People with a learning disability looking for support can find out more and book an assessment by contacting Lee on 01983 685348. Phone lines are open from Monday to Thursday from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and Lee can also be emailed at ldsc@peoplematteriw.org.
This is the second part of the Talking News, read by Susan
and Jerry.
We begin the second part of the Talking News with this week's society news. Swimming is cancelled this week due to school holidays, but will resume next Monday, the 6th of June. Coffee and Chat is this Wednesday at Millbrook House, 10 a.m. to 11:30, and it's only £1 for cake and coffee. Please come along for a chat, and members of staff will be there for any assistance with equipment and information. Our Mix and Mingle group is also not on this week due to the bank holiday.
Our very special Jubilee Party was on Thursday, and wow, what a wonderful time we all had. Around 70 members, volunteers and staff all joined together to celebrate the Jubilee. The Lord Lieutenant Susie Sheldon joined the party and led the toast to our wonderful Queen, followed by everyone singing the national anthem. Amazing memories were made and plenty of photos were taken to capture the moment. A thank you must go to all the volunteers and staff for baking, decorating and clearing up the hall.
A right royal day out. The Earl and Countess of Wessex, Prince Edward and Sophie, had a hectic day of engagements on the island on Tuesday, May the 24th. The couple spent the day on the island as they and other royal family members tour the UK as part of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. After arriving at the Island Riding School, their first stop was Pan, where they were welcomed by pupils of Barton Primary School, and they visited Pan together, Bernardo's Family Centre and Howard's House Homeless Hub. They travelled together to the County Show's Education Day at the Royal Agricultural Society Showground in Northwood, surprising masses of children and teachers as they petted goats, alpacas and llamas, admired prize pigs and cows, and toured various stands. They then joined the children making pizzas, which were cooked and enjoyed. The royal couple joined the island's Lord Lieutenant Susie Showden for lunch made from island products, including sandwiches using Bridlesford Farm butter and cheese and Hazelgrove Farm eggs, followed by cake and cream scones from Bluebells at Bridlesford. After a presentation of a hamper of more island products, they left the showground, with Prince Edward going to Independent Arts in Newport and the Countess visiting South Wight Area Youth, SWAY, a Christian organisation that works with young people. They reunited to visit Columbus House in Shanklin, a retirement complex where they met residents and volunteers and helped with the preparations for the forthcoming Jubilee celebrations, with children waving flags and bunting decorating the location. A guard of honour was provided by the local fire service, and they were welcomed into the homes of 2 of the residents, met 3 centenarians and pupils from the Bay C.E. Gatton and Lake Broadley primary schools, as well as the Priory and Bay C.E. secondary schools. Before leaving, they were presented with commemorative mugs designed by pupils from the Bay CE, specially designed glass, and had time to plant 2 Jubilee roses, helped by representatives from Sandown Green town volunteers. A special bouquet was presented by Gatton Lake pupil Lainey Hayward before they departed, but there was still time for spontaneous conversation with local residents who had gathered to see them depart to Sandown Airfield.
Pint-sized leader is still up for the battle. It's been a roller coaster 12 months, but this week Isle of Wight Council leader Laurie P.C. Wilcock claimed it's full steam ahead now. The Isle of Wight Observer caught up with Laura shortly after the passionate royalist had welcomed Prince Edward and the Countess of Wessex to the island as part of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. Her inbox is full as she looks to the future and the problems islanders face with major issues to tackle, such as poverty, housing and planning. She says the Alliance is still getting to grips with taking over from the Conservatives at County Hall last May. Laura said, "We are still adapting. We had a number of new councillors, people who had never experienced this before. It's taken a while for them to find their feet and fit into their various roles. The first thing we had to do was make a corporate plan with 17 individuals, all with their own ideas, and that was a challenge. We were faced with a variety of issues, including the Isle of Wight speed trials, ride interchange, Chillerton and Rookley Primary School, and parking issues. On top of which, we were only just getting back to a new normal, day-to-day basis, following the lockdown. We had a lot on our plates before we could even draw breath and see what we could get under our belts and start to achieve things. We know there are a lot of challenges over the next 12 months. There is a massive crisis looming with poverty on the island, and we need to work with many organisations to help our residents.
College appoints new principal. After 18 years at the Isle of Wight College, Debbie Lavin, CBE, will be stepping down as principal at the end of this term. Last week, after a rigorous selection process, the college governors confirmed the appointment of Ross Parker, OBE, as the next principal. Ross will join the college at the start of the autumn term 2022. She is currently principal of Southend Adult Community College. Debbie welcomed her successor. She said, "I have enjoyed my 18 years at the Isle of Wight College immensely, and I am pleased to be able to hand over to someone with excellent experience that will keep the college moving forward in the right direction. This is an exciting and positive time for the further education sector as a whole, and for the college in particular. I wish Ross the very best of luck in her new role." Dr. Nick England, chairman of the governing body, said Ross was selected from a strong field of applicants who had been attracted to the post due to the college's excellent national reputation.
Man faces attack trial. A trial date has been set for a Shanklin man accused of an assault on a woman. Ricardo Silva of St Paul's Avenue denied common assault against a woman on January the 5th when he appeared at Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday. He also pleaded not guilty to using threatening, abusive or insulting words and behaviour to cause the same woman harassment, alarm or distress on the same date. The 36-year-old was bailed to reappear on August the 11th.
Stark figures reveal scale of housing and needs. The harsh reality of the Isle of Wight's critical housing need has been highlighted by senior councillors, including 42 island families living in emergency accommodation following an immediate risk of homelessness. It comes as the cost of living crisis makes it harder for people to make ends meet. Speaking at the Council's Cabinet meeting last week, Councillor Ian Stevens, Deputy Leader of the Housing Portfolio Holder, laid bare the numbers of people in most desperate need of housing on the island. The figures reveal 2,466 people are on the Council's housing register. 1,185 people looking for one-bed properties, 756 for 2-bed, 402 for 3 beds, 104 for 4 beds, and 19 for 5 and 6-bed properties. The Council is also supporting 23 homeless singles and couples and 42 homeless families in emergency accommodation. Councillor Stevens said the figures brought home the harsh reality of homelessness and the drastic need to get a planning strategy that is fit for purpose. It was also a call, Councillor Stevens said, for the Council to start its housing building programme and empty property search. In February, the Council agreed to borrow $40 million to build houses for islanders and address the housing crisis, as well as earmarking $2.5 million to start a council-owned housing company.
Trish wears England colours with pride. An island woman demonstrated exactly why she qualified to represent her country as an athlete by winning the Masters Athletics Half Marathon Championships in her age group in Chester. Ride Harriers runner Trish Train proudly wore her England kit to win the national championships in the 55 to 59 age group. In a very strong field which contained 8 other England representatives, Trish was soon into her stride on the undulating Chester course. She soon found herself in a battle with Stephanie Godfrey as the pair battled for the top spot. But with just under 2 miles remaining, Trish made her big push for the finish, pulling away from Godfrey to victory for more than 20 seconds.
Redundancies possible. Composite manufacturing company Guerrero, based in Newport, has confirmed that it is consulting staff over 14 redundancies. A spokesman for the company said, recent supply chain issues and accelerated raw material costs contribute to an extremely challenging outlook, without any favourable changes to be expected in the wider market anytime soon. The spokesman continues, the company has made progress in reducing production costs, increasing efficiencies, not replace recent levers, freezing non-essential recruitment. All these previous efforts have helped to mitigate part of the burden for the business. Hence, both situations in conjunction mean it is no longer sustainable to continue making a loss within this part of our business. Therefore, we were forced to consider labour cost reductions to maintain a viable business presence in the UK for the future. Guerrero's Newport management team will make every effort to facilitate this necessary change fairly, while continuing to service customers and remaining fully committed to maintaining a viable business in the UK. Staff was informed of the intention to consult over job losses on May the 12th.
First event for the Festival of Running. The island's premier running event, the Isle of Wight Festival of Running, starts this Sunday, May the 29th, with runs for adults and children at St Helens Dover. The annual festival is organised by West Wight Sports and Community Centre and has attracted 510 entries in total. The highlight is the Needles Half Marathon on June the 5th, which starts and finishes at the centre, taking runners on a rugged route over Tennyson Down. Also on the same day, the Freshwater 5K and the Needles Junior Fun Run take place. The Dover Dash on Sunday, hosted by Bembridge Harbour, features a 5 kilometres, 3 mile, fun run for adults and a 1 kilometre route for children, with a second lap option. Claire Griffin, WWSCC manager, said, this year's festival coincides with the Platinum Jubilee, which makes it extra special. We are looking forward to another splendid event and are very pleased to welcome familiar faces and new friends. As ever, we are grateful to the marshals and other volunteers who work behind the scenes to make the festival possible.
Review to put planning under spotlight. An independent review into whether the Isle of Wight Council's planning system works or doesn't is being conducted by mainland officials. It comes after allegations of mistreatment were levelled at the Council's Planning Committee in the past few months. The Council's Planning Department will be scrutinised this week when the Local Government Association undertakes a peer review. The review will provide a critical friend's view of the authority's weaknesses and opportunities, the watchdog says. Both the Cabinet Member for Planning, Councillor Paul Fuller, said the review was part of the Council's corporate plan, approved in October last year. It sets out a commitment to review, enhance and improve the planning department and see how it can improve outcomes and adhere to statutory obligations. At a meeting of the Council's Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regeneration earlier this month, it was said the review was requested by the former Chief Executive John Metcalfe. Before Mr Metcalfe left, problems in the planning department had reached a head and it was found that there was a need for an independent review. At a planning committee meeting in March, Councillor Jeff Brodie said he'd had conversations with council officers who are deeply concerned over their health and well-being in the light of the way in which they are being treated by members of the council. In a question to the council leader, Councillor Brodie elaborated further that some officers were living in fear of the sustained public attacks on their services and advice. Councillors have had their say in what they would like included in the review. Speaking at the scrutiny meeting, Councillor Chris Quirk, a former planning committee chair, said one of the biggest things not working in the department is the planning committee.
All aboard as ex-Island line train gets a new role. It's a step up from trolley service for these former Island line trains, as they are given a new lease of life as an eatery. Plans have been unveiled by Hollier's Farm to change the use of the former London Underground carriages from 1938 into a cafe, diner and museum with an outside seating area. The 004 carriages are already at Hollier's Park in Branston, set on sleepers and a section of track. They will add to the tourism offer, joining craft stores, the House of Chili and a woodland walk. The cars have been stripped of their external paint and will be repainted in the iconic London Transport red colour. Internal historic features of the cars, including furniture, brass plates, bolts and rivets, will be retained and restored as much as possible. In a planning statement submitted by agents BCM, further details are revealed about the small kitchen area, which will be mainly used for pre-booked evening meals. The Northern train car will host a small museum. A raised platform will also be built, allowing disabled access. The attraction would be open daily, including Sundays and bank holidays from 8:30 a.m.
Estate strategy approved. Affordable housing for hospital staff, a care home, assisted living accommodation and independent living lodges could all be coming to St Mary's Hospital site as part of a planned £25.5 million estate improvements plan. It is part of the £48 million awarded to the Trust in 2019 to pay for building and IT improvements. The projects proposed for the hospital and in the wider island community are being called Catalyst for Change in an estate strategy which was approved by the Trust Board last week. The strategy is designed to help the Trust prioritise investment and reduce the burden of £11 million worth of backlog maintenance and critical infrastructure risks. As part of the strategy on the 32-acre north site, there would be a range of residential properties to address the shortfall of key working housing, both affordable and open market. There could also be a care home operated by a third party, acting as a step-down facility from the hospital, an extra care village incorporating dementia care with assisted living complex and independent living lodges. Hot and cold zones are being proposed to separate non-elective and elective care pathways at St Mary's, which will help improve the flow of patients through the hospital and allow staff to deliver care in the right place at the right time. 4 projects have been identified to be completed by March 2024. The former HMV store on Newport's High Street, transformed into an integrated mental health and community service hub. Improved intensive care unit and emergency floor at St Mary's, and the creation of a new acute care ward in underutilised accommodation. On the South Hospital site, further opportunities will be explored, but potential uses have been identified, including a restaurant, hotel with conference and gym facilities, and a new community and mental health inpatient facility. Improvements to the ambulance station are proposed to centralise transport services and improve the turnaround of ambulances.
Strange idea of city bid rejected. The bid put forward by Newport to be made a city as part of the celebrations for the upcoming Platinum Jubilee did not make the cut. It was revealed last Friday, May the 20th, that the island will not have a city after the Isle of Wight Council submitted a bid last September, to mixed reactions from politicians and the public. The proposal was put forward by Tory councillor Martin Oliver and supported by his colleague Councillor Chris Kirk. Labour councillor Richard Quigley, it looked like they were trying to push water up a hill with a fork, while Alliance member John Medland feared the strange idea would make the council a laughing stock. Council leader Laura P.C. Wilcox was forthright. If that's what they want to do, then fine, she said, but we're not spending taxpayers' money on it. The towns that had wanted to be recognised as a city had to show their royal associations, their history and heritage, and to talk about their community and why they deserved the recognition of being a city. A total of 8 cities have now been created in honour of the Queen. They are Stanley, capital of the Falkland Islands; Douglas, Isle of Man; Bangor, Northern Ireland; Colchester, Doncaster, Milton Keynes, Dunfermline, Scotland, and Wrexham in Wales.
Health awareness event. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust hosted an event to mark Mental Health Awareness Week in the grounds of St Mary's Hospital recently. Exhibitors included support organisations such as Carers Isle of Wight, Citizens Advice, WOW Isle of Wight Women's Centre, and the Nature Therapy Community Interest Group, who demonstrated soothing drumming aimed at lifting mood and reducing anxiety. The Trust worked with other organisations to bring together more than 20 local community groups who provide a range of advice and services which support people when they are struggling and also provide opportunities and ideas to thrive. Clinical Quality Improvement Lead Rachel Middle said, "Mental Health Awareness Week is an annual event when there is an opportunity for everyone to focus on achieving good mental health, and this year's theme was loneliness. Many of us have been able to reconnect with loved ones in person again after a difficult 2 years of pandemic restrictions. However, we know that many people felt lonely and isolated long before the pandemic and still struggle with this. Local communities play an important part in supporting people to connect with others and to help reduce feelings of loneliness and self-isolation." Amongst the visitors was the Isle of Wight's High Sheriff, Kay Marriott.
Plans for 2 holiday lodges bite the dust. Campaigners in Bembridge were celebrating last week after the Planning Inspectorate turned down an application to build 2 holiday lodges in protected woodland on Love Lane. Love Lane Isle of Wight Limited appealed to the government's planning body after the Isle of Wight Council failed to determine their planning application within statutory time limits. Following a site visit undertaken on May the 4th, the planning inspector decided that the application should be refused. In her report, she said that the proposal would significantly diminish the woodland character of the site, and that the lodges would be dark and gloomy due to the surrounding protected trees. She considered this would lead to pressure for the trees to be cut back or removed. Local residents had mounted a campaign against the plans, which the applicant's planning agents, Plan Research, said had led to the police being called 8 times to deal with protests and allegations of criminal behaviour and COVID restrictions being breached. The appeal document also said that intimidation of people associated with the scheme might be a factor in the council's unwillingness to reach a decision within statutory timescales. Local Isle of Wight councillor Joe Robertson said he was delighted with the Planning Inspectorate's decision. He said the accusations of local mass hysteria by the applicant were unfair and wrong. The Inspectorate agreed with the council and over 300 residents who objected. The development would harm the rural character, threaten trees and not provide a satisfactory standard of accommodation. I would like to sincerely thank residents and local campaigners for their support in resisting this poorly conceived application.
High use of sewage outfalls in May. On day 1 and 2 of the official bathing season, Southern Water used its storm sewage outflow pipes 23 times around the Isle of Wight. As thunder and lightning swept across the island on May the 10th and 11th, large amounts of rain fell too. Southern Water's Beach Boy website alerts beachgoers to areas potentially affected when sewage has been pumped into the sea to ensure the system is not overwhelmed. It shows outfall pumps were used 6 times on the Saturday evening. In the early hours of Monday morning, between around 2 a.m. and 4 a.m, the sewage outfall pipes were used 17 more times. Points off Cowes and Gurnard, at the mouth of the River Medina, at Monkton Mead Brook Ride, off Bembridge and off Yaverland and Sandown, where the town's main beach is flying a blue flag this year, were all used.
Distinguished gentlemen and a few ladies ride out. With their helmets tightly fastened, they may not have looked as cool as Tom Cruise in Top Gun Maverick, but around 70 motorcyclists certainly made a classy impression on island roads on Sunday. They were taking part in the 11th Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, a worldwide series of events in aid of men's health charities. This year's ride was all about returning to group riding wherever possible, with hundreds of thousands of dapper gentlefolk worldwide riding their classic and vintage style motorcycles on the same day. This year's goal aims to raise awareness for prostate cancer research and men's mental health on behalf of charity partner Movember. The group started from Dave Death Motorcycles, Carisbrooke, before heading to the Big Kahuna on Ryde Seafront and finishing at Sandown Pier. Around £4,000 has been raised so far.
Starlight wins prestigious award. Island Dance School Starlight Academy has received a prestigious award following a dance competition in Kent last weekend. The Academy took 31 dancers to Stars UK, where they competed against dancers from across the country in various categories, including ballet, jazz, acro and contemporary dance. Dancers took part in a number of solo, duet, trio and group dances over the weekend, with many bringing home trophies. The award for the top scoring dance school was awarded to the Academy for having the highest combined score out of the 25 dances, winning a trophy taller than some of the youngest members. The show team is made up of 33 members ranging from 6 to 17 years old and is fronted by dance teacher Mary Powdry, who has been teaching on the island for 10 years. She said, "I couldn't believe it when they announced our name. The standard was so high, so to beat off such tough competition was an amazing compliment to our school and something myself and the dancers are all very proud of. The students have worked so hard and are so deserving. I'm truly proud of each one of them, and I can't wait to get back into the studio and start working on our next event."
Champagne flows as Shanklin win league and cup double. The Seasiders finally achieve what they have been threatening to do for 2 or 3 seasons and get the silverware their efforts deserve, winning a league and cup double to round off a remarkable season. The holders of the Isle of Wight Challenge Cup, W&B, went into the game looking to equal a record 4 in a row in the competition held by West Wight. Shanklin went into it as Division 1 champions, but with 2 cup final losses in the Hampshire Saturday Trophy and the Isle of Wight Memorial Cup, they were desperate not to make it an unfortunate hat-trick. The final at Bradingstown's Peters Henry Ground on Tuesday was always going to be tight on paper after so many close battles in recent seasons, and so it proved on the night. After a scrappy opening, with Shanklin forced to soak up plenty of early W&B pressure, Shanklin began to get a foothold into the game. They almost took the lead on 13 minutes with their first meaningful attack. Pete Wilson seeing his close-range header at the back post well parried by Kevin Mitchell.
And now we move on to the Isle of Wight memories.
Falklands 40. Rideman remembers heading south to serve in the 1982 war. It's 40 years since the Falklands War, which lasted from April the 2nd, 1982 to June the 14th, 1982. And Andy Rigsby of Ryde remembers it well. He was a Royal Marine in the 40 Commando Group, based in Plymouth. He was part of 3 Commando Brigade, which was selected to spearhead the 1982 task force, and he was in the unit's Reese Troop. He said, "Our task was to provide forward intelligence by observing and reporting enemy movement and dispositions. We operated in 4-man sections from self-selected and concealed observation posts. On April the 9th, 1982, we embarked in the requisitioned P&O cruise liner Canberra and departed from Southampton. My brother Adrian was also on board in 42 Commando. Intense training programs began immediately. On April the 20th, Canberra arrived off Ascension Island in the mid-Atlantic, and on May the 6th, Canberra set sail with escorting warships south. On May the 19th, we cross-decked by landing craft to the assault ship HMS Fearless. The assault forces had to be embarked in ships that could land them. We were accommodated in landing craft Foxtrot 4 in the ship's stern dry dock area. In the early hours of May the 21st, they loaded into the landing craft for the assault at San Carlos. They emerged under a starlight night sky on a calm sea. 3 weeks later, Foxtrot 4 was bombed and all her crew were killed. Andy recalled, "We could hear the explosions of diversionary raids in the distance as we cruised past HMS Antrim. She opened fire with her 4.5-inch guns. One could hear the metallic clank of spent shell casings being ejected from the turret onto the deck. The warship was firing at enemy troops on Fanning Head, a promontory ahead of us. We landed at San Carlos. Reese Troop assembled ashore and we proceeded to climb the slopes ahead in darkness. As we reached the top in daylight, we dispersed into cover. There was an eerie calm looking down onto the assault fleet below. Dispersed into the sound, helicopters clattered to and fro, transporting stores.
Suddenly the sound of heavy gunfire. A solitary jet came down San Carlos water. It was my first sight of the enemy. It was an MB-339. The pilot had attacked a warship with rockets and fired his cannons at a stores ship. He attracted a massive return fire but survived to file his report. This was the Argentine Navy pilot, Lieutenant Owen Cripper. He would be awarded the Combat Cross, the Argentine equivalent of the VC. The main air attack soon followed. A frigate, HMS Ardent, exposed in Grantham Sound, was relentlessly attacked. Andy continued, as bombs hit her, the explosion sent pieces of superstructure into the air that glinted and twisted in an eerie choreographed dance in the sunlight. Smoke poured from her stern. She bravely returned fire with her guns and missiles. HMS Ardent sank, and over 50 of her crew were killed and wounded. That evening we moved southeast into the exposed hinterland towards our planned positions. The battle for St. Carlos raged behind us for 4 days. On May the 28th, 29th, we listened to 2 para prosecute their attack down the narrow Darwin and Goose Green to the south. Days later, we observed an enemy helicopter and a 4-man patrol in broad daylight. An artillery fire mission was unavailable. We deduced it was the Argentine 602 Commando Company. Their deluded action and naive lack of tactical awareness was shocking. They were lucky to survive. We were extracted by helicopter after 10 days to San Carlos. Wreckage from downed enemy aircraft was in the valleys below us. St. Carlos was a mass of trenches and positions. There were bomb craters and cannon damage to buildings. Our observation post-insertion tasks and short R&R periods to San Carlos continued. During the morning, June the 7th, HMS Exeter suddenly fired 2 Sea Dart missiles. It was a clear day and we were not under attack. The second missile climbed out of view. A smoke trail then appeared and the glint of structural material falling. The ship had detected an enemy reconnaissance Learjet flying at 30,000 feet. The push towards the mountains skirting Port Stanley saw heavy fighting. My brother fought in the battle for Mount Harriet. He saw HMS Glamorgan hit by the land-based Exeter missile that killed 13 crew. On June the 14th, the Argentine forces surrendered. After clearing settlements on West Falkland, we were flown on board Canberra, anchored off Port Stanley. We berthed at Southampton on July the 11th to a welcome that we didn't anticipate and one we will never forget.
Why do boomers like minions? I had the privilege of dining with a group of senior citizens recently. Actually, let me be honest, I was in a seaside cafe and a posse of greyheads ambled in straight off the coach, looking for tea and a wee. Listening to their conversations as I ate, I noticed just how much of it was framed with dissatisfaction. If a subject came up, it was introduced by saying how bad it was. The coach driver, the weather, the cost of stamps, an absent spouse, and more were fair game. The topic switched to young people, and sure enough, they received the same treatment. If I'd have been a young person walking in and overhearing this moaning, I would have been dismayed. I appreciated that for this particular group of elderly companions, griping was just how they discussed things. They all seemed perfectly cheerful, and I am sure that they had no intention of upsetting anyone. But it proved an example of how communication between generations has become something that isn't always perfect. Oldsters complaining about the youths around them, or vice versa, is not new. But popular media and corporate marketing is, I believe, exaggerating these tendencies to our disadvantage. You may be familiar with the terms boomer and millennial, although a few years ago you probably were not. These new words have their origins in American marketing jargon and would most effectively be translated as old people and young people. But all too often you read of breathless articles accusing millennials of being idle, work shy, internet addicts, or boomers of being out of touch, money hoarders who poisoned the planet. For example, the top entry on Google search autocomplete starting with "How did boomers?" ends with "ruin the housing market." For "Why do millennials?" one can soon find the ending "hate working." Strong words, but do we actually think like this about old and young people we know? Generally not. Research suggests, although we sometimes struggle to communicate with those of a different generation, we almost all want to do so and find it positive when we do. Sadly, when a negative stereotyping is repeated, it gets reinforced and people end up believing it is true. There has been a regrettable history of popular media using stereotypes to fan the flames of hatred. Foreigners, the poor, Muslims, migrants and more have been targeted in the past for bigoted criticism. I suppose we must have run out of minority groups to hate, so the next targets we are being offered are our own children and grandparents. I hope that we are all grown up enough not to fall for this cynical marketing ploy. Some intergenerational mysteries can't be so easily explained. For Google autocomplete on the phrase "Why do boomers?", bizarrely the top answer is "love minions." Do old folk love minions? If so, why? I've never even wondered about that until I started researching for this article. And now I really want to know. Please, can anyone old enough help me out?
Here's a better idea than an Isle of Wight National Park by Bob Seeley, MP for the Isle of Wight. As islanders, we share a common love for our island's natural beauty. There are exciting plans to improve protected landscapes in the UK, defined as landscapes which are key part of our nation's natural world. Over half the island is already designated as an area of outstanding natural beauty. It's a remarkable mosaic of naturally recognised landscapes: pasture, chalk downs, woodland, 2 of 4 heritage coasts in southeast England, beaches, harbours and creeks. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has pledged to increase protected landscapes in Britain, and I am talking with the Council and Government about a possible island designation as a national designation. This would mean higher environmental standards with measures to create a sustainable future for humans and nature. A few political opponents claim I want a national park and will be snowed under with new regulations. This is untrue. While having a national park on the island would be popular with some, it is not feasible in this era. However, a new island designation could be. Here are some reasons for an island designation. Our protected landscape is fragmented into individual packets. Island designation would improve unified landscape and maritime protection. On land, it would mean a higher standard of protection. Due to our limited space, islands are particularly sensitive to overdevelopment. The island's rivers are now heavily modified and none are rated good. In the last 50 years, several dozen species have become extinct locally, largely due to habitat change and habitat loss. An island designation would imply a block, as it currently does in all areas of outstanding natural beauty areas and large-scale greenfield development. Development would need to be small-scaled and more focused on affordable housing for islanders. Frankly, this is what islanders want. A single protected landscape status would also fit in with the island status as a UNESCO biosphere. I'd suggest that island designation should have a strong element that supports a sustainable future for people as well as nature. It would serve as a branding for the island to support tourism and island food and drink produce. It would include agricultural support. Under the current scheme, island farmers have struggled to compete, despite the advantages of producing food and drink in Britain's sunniest environments. I want to change that. Summing up, recognising island status for islands makes sense. For us and other UK islands, helping to create a sustainable future for both human and natural worlds.
There are so many Jubilee celebrations this week. There will be an event near you.
And now we go to the letters. I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for him. The name and address supplied, but withheld. In reply to an article you did about J. Morris, the County Press, 25th of February, that man and his gym have changed so many lives and he doesn't get the recognition he deserves. I started boxing when I was juiced up with drug addiction. Life was going in a bad direction, surrounded by bad people. Boxing and Jay helped me for the first time in my life, showing me there's more to get from life. He helped me with my mental health. I no longer take illegal substances to get by. I no longer take steroids. He's so much more than just a boxing coach. He uses his experiences, good and bad, to advise us. And if I am honest, I wouldn't be alive now if it wasn't for him.
In Praise of Medical Staff by Carol Vaughan from Freshwater. After reading your letter from a patient at St Mary's Hospital, which was in the County Press on the 25th of May, I would like to say that I have just returned home after having a full hip replacement after tripping and falling and breaking my hip in the garden last week. I was treated with so much care and tenderness, and all the medical professionals worked together so well to ensure my quick return home. Despite the obvious pressure the staff are under, I felt a friendliness there. Laying in bed all day, the few kind words and conversations with staff, like the cleaners and the tea lady, helps with morale. I have great respect for them all. Thank you.
What? No cash? John Cousland, Shanklin. Whitelink's Portsmouth Harbour ticket office now refuses to accept cash payments for tickets. Long after even most of us have had antibodies to COVID by vaccination or infection, and often both. Last Saturday I was surprised to be refused the option to pay in cash to buy my return Whitelink catamaran ticket to ride. Luckily I had a payment card, but if I had no card or my card had not been working or had been stolen or lost, I would have been refused travel by Whitelink. Apparently this is now legal according to our present government laws. To me, it is an injustice to take away the right to use cash for essential travel and essential services when needed. It is one more nail in the coffin of democracy in this country and a step in the direction of Big Brother government. 1984 is only 38 years later than George Orwell predicted. If your readers agree, maybe they might like to write or email about Whitelink and others who take away our freedom to pay cash when needs must.
Helpful and kind bus drivers were stars by Karen Butler from Freshwater. In March and April of this year, I walked the island coastal path in memory of my partner who died of pancreatic cancer. and to raise money for research into methods of diagnosis and possible treatments for this wretched disease. This involved getting to grips with the island's bus services. I had never been on an island bus before, and within a week I'd discovered a huge amount of the various routes, timetables and routines. This letter is to say how enjoyable it all was and to praise the many drivers I've met. They were unfailingly kind and thoughtful, giving me guidance about the various stops and making a point of dropping me off just where I needed to be to pick up the start of the next leg of the walk. I was extremely impressed by the high level of skill evident as drivers negotiated tight bends, stopped and gave way to larger vehicles, in some places backing to allowing farm vehicles to get through narrow lanes, and took every conceivable precaution to keep their passengers safe. They were courteous and friendly, acknowledging one another whenever two buses passed going in the opposite directions with a toot and a wave. There seemed to be so many articles in the press about violence and hateful behaviour. It's time we celebrated a workforce that represents so much that is positive and kind. Thank you all.
Council AGM Pantomime from Councillor Vanessa Churchman, Isle of Wight Councillor for Haylands and Swanmore. As a councillor, I don't know whether to laugh or cry at the performance last Wednesday at the AGM of full council. To see the total disarray of the Alliance Group when nominating a cabinet member as vice chairman of the Isle of Wight Council and then being informed it was unconstitutional was incredible. It just beggars belief that this fact was not known by Alliance members. After scurrying about, Councillor Lilly was named. As he had just resigned as chair of planning, he possibly thought he was in for a bit of a well-earned rest, but he duly stepped up to the mark. We then had nominations for chair of planning. Dead silence from the Alliance Group. The Conservatives have nominated Councillor Drew. The pantomime then continued with more running about the chamber. The only thing lacking in the Alliance Group was an auctioneer. Who wants chair of planning? What am I bid? Councillor Medland, who had spoken out against the island planning strategy, secured the chair. The Alliance do not have a majority on the council, but control 11 of the 12 committees, as well as all cabinet positions, chair and vice chair of the council, and of course leader. I have served as a councillor spanning 17 years, but I'm now seeing a total disregard for democracy and any effective scrutiny of the Isle of Wight Council's functions. Incidentally, the Alliance Group is now registered as a political group, yet their members were elected as independents.
Shocking service from Whitelink by Councillor Paul Brading, a member for Lake South and chair of the Isle of Wight Multiple Sclerosis Society. I had the absolute honour of attending the Queen's Garden Party at Buckingham Palace on Wednesday, May the 18th, representing the Isle of Wight Multiple Sclerosis Society. It was a truly memorable day, meeting the Earl and Countess of Wessex and the Duchess of Cambridge, alongside so many other deserving people. The weather was hot and sunny, the gardens immaculate, and the food was amazing, which made it a magical day. The only slight issue was the shocking service provided by Whitelink. The event finished at 6 p.m, and there is no way at all you can get a train back from Victoria Station to get to Portsmouth to catch the last catamaran at 8:20 p.m. We had to wait until the 10:15 p.m. car ferry, which left late, on which there were around 70 foot passengers on a Wednesday in the middle of May. When will Whitelink realise and accept that they are a vital service provider to the island and actually provide a service that we all need and deserve?
And that is the end of the talking news for this week. So it's goodbye from Susan
and goodbye from Jerry.
The In Touch programme follows, and the scaffolding news follows that. Barriers to travel. In Touch. For some people with visual impairments, when wanting to travel abroad, there are many considerations to take into account, namely booking assistance at airports and travel requirements for your guide dog if you have one. Since Brexit, there have been changes to regulations of taking guide dogs abroad. Before, owners had to acquire a pet passport, but now an animal health certificate is required. We heard from In Touch listeners that the cost of said certificates can be quite steep and can vary depending on veterinary practices. We investigate why this is and what the new requirements are with Chris Theobald, Guide Dog Senior Campaigns Manager, with David Adams, the President of the European Guide Dogs Federation, and with Justin Shotton, who is the President of the British Veterinary Association. Mal Griffiths contacted In Touch when she had a problem with Birmingham's Airport Assistance Service. She tells us what happened. Today, presenter is Peter Wight, producer Beth Hemmings, and production coordinator Paul Hollyway.
Good evening. Tonight, as promised, some of the barriers for visually impaired people to travel confidently and what can be done to remove them. For instance, why taking your guide dog abroad has suddenly become more expensive and unpredictable. And why, after being promised assistance to get to your flight, some travellers find themselves sitting and sweating in limbo.
I've never felt so totally helpless, if you like, because your only point of reference is the wretched blue seat.
All tonight's stories come directly from listeners, like this first one, prompted by an email from Dorothy Vernon. She says, I've learned through a friend that the travel requirements for guide dogs going abroad has become very expensive. Basically, a new pet certificate for every journey costs at least £110 each time. Surely that has to stop. Adults' passports last for years, with changing hairstyles ignored. Well, the introduction of pets' passports over 20 years ago certainly did make a major difference to guide dog owners for whom, up until then, it had been pretty much impossible to take their guide dogs abroad. So what is happening and why? Chris Theobald of the charity Guide Dogs is the Senior Campaigns Manager. Chris, first of all, just explain, what are these changes and what's caused them?
When the UK left the European Union after the transitional period had ended, most of the UK was no longer part of the pet passport scheme. So you used to be able to get your pet passport, and as long as your rabies vaccination was up to date for your dog, and also you'd had the tapeworming treatment, you could go abroad with relative ease. Now, however, the UK attempted to apply for a status that's held by some other European but non-EU member countries, and that was declined by the European Commission. And so every single time a person travels from Great Britain, so England, Wales and Scotland, to the European Union, they will need to get an animal health certificate each time they travel, which, as you say, is costly. It's a little bit different for Northern Ireland. They remain a member of the pet passport scheme, but there's the potential for the same requirements to be applied when travelling to Northern Ireland from Great Britain.
And what about the issue of cost? I mean, is this more expensive than what you would have had to have done before because you still needed a pet's passport?
Yes, it is more expensive than before because you need to get a new animal health certificate for every time you travel. The animal health certificates can only be obtained a certain period before you travel, and they're only valid for a certain time after they've been issued. So you can't just get one for the beginning of the year just in case you need to travel at short notice, for example. And also the costs are really variable. So you have to obtain one from an official veterinarian, which is a veterinarian which has undertaken qualifications to carry out certain tasks. So not every vet. And there isn't actually a cap on the cost of these animal health certificates. And so we have heard of animal health certificates costing in excess of £250. And anecdotally, we're aware that some vets have stopped issuing them because of the complexity and the cost of it. We've been working with the UK government since the referendum to highlight these issues, and in the Northern Ireland Department for the Environment, and we've been communicating with the EU. So We do appreciate it's a very complicated area, UK-EU relationships. This is part of a much wider issue. But nevertheless, this is something we continue to emphasise, because without being able to travel with guide dogs, many people wouldn't be able to travel at all. It's impacting on people's work, their family life. We've been consistently emphasising the very different and unique role that guide and other assistance dogs play. It's not comparable to other items, which unfortunately they've been caught up in all these debates around importation of goods, which we don't think is appropriate.
And just one more thing, have you been talking to the vets about this?
I know some of my colleagues are in contact with the veterinary sector, and we have strong relationships, and we work with them on a number of different issues as one of the largest breeders of dogs in the world as well. The main thing, though, is whilst the cost of animal health certificates is a deep concern, if we actually had Part 1 listed status, there wouldn't be the need for them. So it would mitigate that entirely, which is our preferred option.
Chris Theobald, Senior Campaigns Manager for Guide Dogs, thank you very much indeed. Well, someone whose work is being directly affected by these changes is David Adams, President of the European Federation of Guide Dogs. David told me about the implications of these changes for him on his work.
We have members in 25 countries across Europe. I have to visit them or other associated agencies from time to time. I sometimes have to go to Europe 3 times in a month. And with these new regulations, that is totally impossible, because the vets need 10 days clear notice to prepare the form, takes them a couple of hours, costs an arm and a leg, and you can only do a maximum of 2 a month if you do everything else perfectly correctly.
Well, you say an arm and a leg. Can you tell me what it is costing you?
Well, it starts around £150 per trip. You can only use it once. When you come back, it's voided and you have to start again. So it's a minimum of £150. And then on top of that, there's no regulation to the fee. So it could be as much as £250, I've heard.
And you argue that this is a human rights issue rather than simply a negotiating issue between the UK and the EU.
Absolutely right. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities basically says we should be treated as any other person, which is quite reasonable. But with this, when my friend in France died, his funeral was 7 days later. And, I've known this guy 40 years. I couldn't be there to comfort his widow. It was impossible to do it because of the time constraints.
What are you being told by DEFRA and the Disabilities Minister about what can be done about this? I mean, presumably you don't question the importance of protecting the UK from the reintroduction of rabies.
It's the other way round. We can always come back to the UK. It's getting out to Europe that's the problem. DEFRA just basically says we're stuck with the agreement we've been given. To me, it's a crazy situation. DEFRA is looking at it as a veterinary issue, and we're looking at it as a human rights issue. It's like saying you can't go unless your wheelchair has been oiled and then inspected by an engineer for your wheelchair, or your walking stick has a rubber knob on the end. But here we have a dog that's been trained, that's been tested, is perfectly secure from a veterinary point of view, and the only test we have to do, apart from this animal health certificate, is to get a worming treatment before we come back to the UK to make sure we don't bring anything in from Europe.
Now, DEFRA told us we're continuing to press the European Commission to list the UK as a Part 1 third country for the purposes of the EU pet travel scheme. What that would mean is that the EU animal health certificates would not be required. And these costs could be removed. And they say, we don't want to see assistance dog users having to pay high prices. It's for individual veterinary practices to set their costs, and the government doesn't have a role in that. What would you say to that?
Well, it's a 14-page form. It diverts vets from their proper job of looking after animals. And it's only reasonable that they charge for what they do. The point is, as far as I'm concerned, they should not be doing it. We used to be a Part 1 country. Nothing's changed except Brexit happened. And it's like we're being punished.
David Adams, President of the European Federation of Guide Dogs, thank you very much indeed. So, on this question of filling in these forms to get your animal health certificates, we are joined by Justine Shotton, who is President of the British Veterinary Association. Justine, I mean, do you accept that there are real difficulties for guide dog owners in actually getting these forms filled in?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real challenge, and we can completely empathise with these owners and the amount of time that vets and the owners are having to put into these repeat certificates for multiple travel.
What is the problem with these forms?
Well, they take a lot of time. They're often in dual languages. The vet has to be an official veterinarian, as they also did for the pet passport scheme. But it's not a case of just checking the microchip, ensuring the vaccinations are up to date, appropriate worming and flea treatment, etc., and stamping and signing the passport. It's really a case of going through in extreme amounts of detail. When they first rolled them out, there were changes. It was a new form. Vets are becoming increasingly familiar with them, which is fantastic. And hopefully that will help speed this process up. But unfortunately, it's not really within the vet's power to make them any easier. They are predetermined, and they have to fill them in the level of detail and ensure they're perfectly correct. Each form might be slightly different, and we need to make sure these animals are not being held up when they're travelling. So the vets really need to spend a lot of time getting them perfect.
But on this question of cost, who fixes the prices for getting these forms filled in? You know, the government says it's down to individual veterinary practices.
Yeah, so it's up to the individual practice to set their fees, as it is with any sort of a veterinary treatment, based on, their staff costs, their overheads, the sort of practice they are, the amount of time it takes, what other procedures they might have to sacrifice to do these forms, etc. So there is no real set fee. Some practices that are actually so busy at the moment with other sort of animal clinical cases that they're having to turn these sorts of certification work away just to deal with the volume of work for general dog and cat care at the moment too.
So that is happening. You are hearing of people who are saying, we just can't do this.
Yeah, unfortunately, the profession is under a lot of stress at the moment because of the number of new pet owners, for example, and just the volume of work, plus, real problems with the workforce in our veterinary profession. So our advice would absolutely be to guide dog owners and pet owners in general, if you're going to be travelling, do contact your vets well in advance to make sure that they can do this and they have the capacity, talk about costs, go through all of that, so you can make sure you're best prepared and you're not going to be turned away.
So people could be paying up to £250, is that true?
It may well be. Like I said, it does depend on the individual practice, and the amount of charges that they will charge depends on, the amount that they've got to cover. So unfortunately, there's no sort of set fee for this sort of thing.
Do you think these forms need to be quite this complicated?
Well, I mean, I'm sure our profession, as well as the guide dog owners, would love if they were simpler, or if we had something like the pet passport scheme. The vets do not enjoy this sort of certification work like they do the clinical work, really. It just makes everyone's life a bit more difficult than it used to be. But unfortunately, that's not within our control, or really even our government's control. But it sounds like the work that they've been doing with the lobbying and getting that Part 1 third country status could be a really good positive way forward.
Justine Shotton of the British Veterinary Association, thank you very much indeed. And just to emphasise, the Guide Dogs Association strongly urge guide dog owners to contact either an official veterinarian or DEFRA if they're in Great Britain. If in Northern Ireland, they should contact the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. But whether you have a guide dog or not, airports are very daunting places to navigate. Noisy, endless queues, things on different levels, multiple gates. I would say that making it to the plane is virtually impossible without some sighted assistance. Now, this is something which is provided at airports, but how they deliver it varies. And all too often, we hear cases like the one Mel Griffiths has been telling me about, which happened to her earlier this month.
Myself and my husband are both totally blind, so we booked special assistance for a holiday to Tenerife. We arrived at Birmingham Airport, we arrived at the special assist desk, all was fine. We were taken through check-in very easily with a guide, and also through security. That was very, very easy. However, once we got to the other side of security, we were asked to sit on the blue seats. It was very definite that they were blue. And I actually asked the gentleman guiding if he could direct me to where the nearest toilets were, at which point he said no, his job was to take me to the blue seats. He said that somebody would be with us an hour before our flight time. So our flight time was, as far as we were concerned on the TUI app, it was 3:15. So we were expecting somebody to come for us at 2:15. 2:15 came and went, 2:30 came and went, 2:45 came, at which point we thought we need to be a bit proactive about this. We actually ended up calling TUI, and they did actually give us a number for the special assistance desk at Birmingham, which we rang, but it just rang out. But the real problem when you're sitting in the seating area is there's no information desk and there are no announcements. So you have no point of reference to get any information for yourself.
Presumably you said when you were dumped on the blue seats, if there's a problem, what can we do?
I did. Yeah. I asked if there was a number I could call if anything went wrong, and he just said no. Right. There was a definite no. There was no conversation, no assurance. It was just no. There's no number. So 2:45, we decided enough was enough. I managed to accost somebody who was having quite a lively conversation, and they were able to point me out a member of staff. Now, this guy was actually a plumber and a total lifesaver. He wasn't airport staff as such, although he was working in the airport. And he took us to the gate. And what really upset me, when the gate opened and we started to move forward, we got to the desk. And one guy said to the other guy, how did they get here? Well, we're not trained to help them. I've never felt so totally helpless, if you like, because your only point of reference is the wretched blue seat. And just waiting there, to be at the total whim of somebody else, to me was, I've never been so stressed in a travel situation, ever.
Have you complained to Birmingham Airport?
I haven't spoken to them yet, although I do believe they are wanting to speak with me, and I will speak with them and explain how I felt, certainly.
Well, we have approached Birmingham Airport to invite them onto the programme to explain what went wrong. They said, and I quote, after careful consideration, we've decided not to put someone up. They go on to say, while pleased that they successfully made their flight on May the 1st, we're concerned to hear that Mrs Griffiths is unhappy with the service she and her husband received. We'd welcome a chance to speak with her, better to understand how we could improve our assisted travel service. But they do say the scheduled departure time for the flight was 10 minutes after Mrs Griffiths said, and was showing on the board as a 15:45 departure. The assigned agent arrived in the seating area at 2 minutes to 3, 33 minutes before the boarding gate for the flight opened, giving ample time to ensure that Mr and Mrs Griffiths were boarded first. What do you say to that?
This holiday was booked for 2020, and obviously for all the reasons that everybody else's travel was cancelled, ours was cancelled. And I was absolutely determined I needed to be on that flight. To come at 2 minutes to 3 for what we believed was a 3:15 flight is too late. I'm not prepared to just sit there and hope that somebody will come for me. And the fact that there was information on the board didn't help me. There was no information for somebody who is blind.
They may be making the assumption that people can get that information on a smartphone.
Well, the only information we had was on the TUI app, which actually said that the flight was 3:15. Now, this is one thing I want to investigate, whether there are smartphone apps that will give live airport departure and arrival times. This is something I will certainly look into for next time we travel, because when you're sitting on a seat with just noise and bustle and no information, it feels like almost sensory overload with nothing useful.
Mel Griffiths, thank you very much indeed. And that's it for today. We welcome your views, of course, and comments about anything you hear on the programme, including your airport experiences. And next week, we're going outdoors, gardening as a hobby, an interest, and also pursuing an interest in wildlife when you're visually impaired. For instance, identifying birdsong. Any tips? Email in touch at bbc.co.uk. Leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338 or go to our website bbc.co.uk/in touch. From me, Peter Wight, producer Beth Hemmings and studio managers Jonathan Esp and Nat Stokes, goodbye.
Scaffolding and Skips News, week commencing 27th of May 2022. Newport area. The Old Mill, St Cross Lane. Lighthouse Medical Centre, 62 Crocker Street. Exchange House, St Cross Lane. Newport Minster, St Thomas's Square. Co-op Funeral Care, 61 St James's Street. Newport Skips, 56 Albany Road.
Cows, Old NatWest Bank, 104 High Street. Cow Skips, Ivy Dean Princes Street, 63 Moor Green Road.
Ride, Friends of the Animals, High Street, Garfield Road. 21A and 22A Cross Street. The Crown Inn Pub, St Thomas's Square, High Street. Ride Skips, 21A and 22A Cross Street.
Seaview, Villa Marguerite, High Street. Warren Boats, Blewett Avenue. Brading, 74 and 76 Lower Furlongs. Sandown, 20 High Street. Sandown Methodist Church, Station Avenue Car Park.
Shanklin area, Sunny Bay Flats, 2 Alexander Road and 57 High Street. Ventnor area, 2 High Street, 24 Spring Hill, Castle Cliff, Castle Road.